Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead, and agricultural meteorologist Greg Soulje is back with us today on this Friday. Welcome, Greg.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Nice to be with you here on a finally Friday on a day that is featuring, and I'm sure clamoring from one and all out there over the middle part of the Corn Belt. Turn it off. That is
Please
enough.
turn that spigot off. It is
Yes.
had plenty of rain, but I think some more is on its way from what maps I've looked at least this morning.
Yeah, it really continues on, but we're going to try and transition to at least lesser, maybe coverages, more scattered activity, and hopefully bring an end to some of the real tough heat wave weather conditions that continue to plague the south end of winter wheat and more so livestock country in Oklahoma and Texas. So here we go.
Well, go ahead. Give us the update, please.
All righty, and there's the visible satellite picture that defines a somewhat cooler, drier air from the northwoods of Wisconsin up towards the Sioux versus a capped off too hot atmosphere to make anything over Oklahoma, parts of the southeastern plains in between. You can almost see, we'll see it on a more regionalized look at the satellite picture, kind of several swirls of upper energy or low pressure waves kind of tracking along this boundary. And sometimes you get into this time of the year, late July and August, because steering currents are weak. Things don't move all that much. They may actually move, but not make any significant north or south or east or west of progress. And so you get sometimes your more substantial, prolific, record-setting rainfalls over a given time. There are places like around Aurora, Illinois, back about 25, 30 years ago that had some 17 inches of rain on an overnight outburst of showers and thunderstorms. I haven't seen those totals, but it is enough to cause some consternation and issues in some of these central Corn Belt areas, stretching from about Boone, Iowa. More rain there, and probably some standing waters in the field. But if you can stay away, and we've mentioned this before, for the severe end of things, as the hail, the high wind, the green snap, the launching, the blowdown, and structural issues taking out some of these fields, they ought to be in relatively good shape around here. But there is the upper air charts with a little bend in the western states with a pattern shift getting going there. Meanwhile, systems kind of run the periphery of the hot ridge, the ridge riding, the ring of fire set up from the southern plains in the Midwest, where it's just recurring, repeating, not only the showers and thunderstorms, but these generalized rains that at a point now are not helping things out whatsoever. And so there is the surface map, kind of an east-west. Sometimes you get these U-shaped turned on their side troughs and frontal boundaries that line up over the middle part of the country. And the problem with that is that means just systems kind of track along these boundaries, and you just don't get much to speak of in the way of any movement. And the rains that will continue on down. Matter of fact, just saw some of the rainfall totals around Boone and south of there, by the way. Another 1.5 to 2.5 inches of rain have come down there at the Farm Progress Show site over the past 24 hours. They are well watered down and ought to be completely removed, if not close to ongoing dryness and drought-related issues. There is the Midwestern look, and you can see several bumpy cloud areas. Those are the taller cloud canopies, the little weak little curls or commas that are rotating on that boundary. That's upper air disturbances, and it just continues to ignite. And you get into the daytime heating effect, and you're off to the races and generating showers, thunderstorms, and it takes the overnight through mid-morning to get things to finally wind down. And this is a very much well-defined, problematic look at the at least residual and effects of the showers and thunderstorms on a more regionalized look. Systems coming through the Central Plains into the Midwest and Mid-Mississippi Valley, but the boundary, these systems, these rain areas are running parallel to the upper air flow and the boundary. So there's really no north-south significant movement. They continue over the same area. It's called a training effect, much like a railroad system. The boxcars, the caboose, they'll run those things, the locomotive, one after another. Same applies to the field of meteorology. Again, as mentioned, there are some spots into far north central, let's see, this would be far northern Champaign County, Illinois, far southern Ford County, Illinois, around the Paxton area that are pushing 7 inches. Otherwise, it's been a pretty general 2 to 4, some spots as much as 4 to 6 inches of rain extending over central and east central Illinois, and another 1/2 to 2 inches into Indiana, where the White River around Muncie has crested the highest since 1939. And so there are issues galore with too much of a good thing and full-fledged tire, or at least the tile lines, he tries to say, running cool if they can keep up with the capacity of the rain coming on down. There's that boundary that is the focal point along and north of it. Classic textbook, 150 miles north of the warm front. You get rain. There it is. And Iowa, central Illinois, Indiana, as well as Ohio, scattered activity, southern Canadian prairie, and the monsoon pickup trying to just happen in the southwestern part of the country. So the headlines across the Corn Belt, the showers, thunderstorms from Nebraska all the way to the Buckeye State, parts of Iowa, central Illinois, any central to central Indiana. River is pushed those streams and rivers to add and better than bankful. Lowland ag flooding continues on, streams and rivers as well, streets as well. Around Champaign and Danville, Illinois, for example, are underwater. So some issues continue to go galore there. If you are removed from the severe and the rains have been even keeled, you have great, fantastic, many corn and soybean fields, 65, 70% of the dough stage right now, and 30 to 50%, I believe, of the beans are pods are in the pod stage right now. So if you stay away from the severe stuff, you are in relatively good order. There was what was left of the drought monitor from just a couple of days ago. So some of these rains will officially pull the central parts of Illinois out of the dryness and drought. Same with northern Illinois. Parts of southern Wisconsin, you can see some southeastern Wisconsin and northeast Illinois areas, despite the rain and all the wind and wind damage, of course, that came with it, unfortunately. Still some work to do with dryness and drought. We're going to make amends through Michigan. So still some of these northern and western Corn Belt areas are in abnormally dry or moderate drought conditions. Across the United States areas, a significant cool-off is underway. You know, we talked about on the live stream back last month, these little lobes of cool air that will be dropping on in, and we're seeing just that begin to materialize. There'll be a couple of pronounced ones here later on next week, and then a little recovery, and then towards the end part of August, a more substantial cooling trend is expected, as we've been talking about on their longer range stuff. In any event, contrast to the cooling across the northern plains and activity, blazing heat into livestock country of Texas and Oklahoma. Forget about the pasture lands there. And so issues continue there, and cascading effects on rangeland, rain-fed crops, and the cattle operations, and some of the core of the heat that's still heading towards 105 and feeling like almost 115 in the southern plains of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas this afternoon. Hot weather in those same lower Mississippi Valley Delta regions. Off to the east, a little better go of it. Still lots of work to do on dryness in the southeastern part of the country, and a couple of scattered showers, thunderstorms in the afternoon hours down through the southeastern part of the country, where, again, eastern Carolinas, Georgia, still in the worst of dryness and drought. Some improvement noted inland areas, not too shabby across Alabama, still across the northern Delta, too dry. And you can see the expanse of dryness and drought through the upper Midwest, northern plains, especially the western half of the plains from at least to Kansas on westward, just about all of Oklahoma and Nebraska, not to mention the southwestern parts of the country and Pacific Northwest, where the fires continue on. 480,000 acres between Washington State, Oregon, and Idaho, pushing the total acreage for fires in the West to about 125 to 130 for 5% of normal. That would put it at about almost 5 million acres up in smoke this season. So air quality and lightning strikes continue to feed to that. Although on the TV show this week in agribusiness, we do see a pattern shift with maybe a little more meaningful actual rain that may come down in the Pacific Northwest and parts of the Great Basin going forward into next week. Our concerns next couple of days have been reduced and kind of still holding on across the Pacific Northwest, maybe parts of Oklahoma and Texas, and shrinking in capacity across parts of the Snake River Valley of Idaho. And so testimony that some of the moisture may actually reach the ground and hopefully help with fire containment issues and air quality issues across the Pacific Northwest. There's a pretty good representation of it. Still some lightning, of course, but again, it's better than it has been along the divide and westward from a rain standpoint. The scattered showers and thunderstorms will wind down. It's what we call a dirty break or a dirty conclusion of the rains. Sometimes when they run the diurnal basis, that means they fire up by day. They wind down early in the morning. On the opposite side of the calendar and the other day part. So they start in the afternoon, wind down overnight into the morning hours. This will take a little while longer into parts of eastern Illinois and Indiana, then redevelop and hold on across parts of Iowa this afternoon. And they'll pick up again from Boone northward up towards the Minnesota line. So wouldn't be surprised when we get some reports from Mr. Youngman out there that there's some standing water in those fields out there at Farm Progress. We still got 2 or 3 weeks, a couple of weeks before we can get before the show gets going. So hopefully we'll get some improved and firm grounds out there. I think that should be the story going forward. And the redevelopment of those showers and thunderstorms propagate a little bit northward. Maybe my place and Sarah's place will get some significant rainfall overnight tonight and tomorrow morning. But systems beginning to move now, a little more progression to them. So that's good news. And there may be maybe a half to an inch and a half worth of rain through northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin overnight tonight and tomorrow morning. That batch blows up into Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. Again, the key dry, drought-ridden areas. And this is welcome news that troughiness in the west, sagging frontal boundary upslope will mean maybe some meaningful rainfall. First they've seen it in a while in its western and central Kansas, eastern Colorado, and the Nebraska Panhandle. And that frontal boundary is on the move, and it does contain cooler, drier air. And despite the scattered nature to some of these storms evolving over the central and southern Corn Belt, there'll be the likelihood of some severe weather in spots. So we're trading off the organized wet weather to severe weather again. And I tell you, 100-mile-an-hour winds across North Dakota have been reported this past week, 95 to 100-mile-an-hour winds through northern Illinois, southeast Wisconsin, northwest and northern Indiana over the early part of the week as well. So some cleanup and recovery because of that. There's the next 2 days focused on northwest and northern Illinois, south and eastern Iowa. That will again begin to build its way on northward. And there's a severe weather threat for this afternoon into parts of Iowa, northwest Illinois, and the mid-Mississippi Valley, and then shifting east, maybe a little too far east, but the right idea that it'll be parts of Indiana. I would like to see this back in Michigan. It will be back in Illinois, I should say, with a slight risk on Sunday, and across the high plains areas of Colorado, Kansas, and Nebraska. This time of the year, that means large hail. So Monday to Wednesday, the H is always what we focus on this time of the year, and it is a huge sinking air mass. Of course, we experienced that through much of the plains sections of the Corn Belt over the past couple of 2 or 3 weeks. So it's back and forth between the southern plains into the southwestern part of the country. A piece of it will be going into the southeastern sections as well. And I'll tell you, that hot ridge is putting a kibosh on any tropical weather, along with El Nino's strong winds and a lot of Saharan dust. Remarkably quiet for now in the Atlantic. Remarkably busy in the eastern Pacific. We'll take a look at that in just a second, but can see some downstream troughiness over the middle part and eastern parts of the country. Should represent some significant cooling, drier air, and a conclusion to this horribly wet weather pattern early to mid next week across much of the northern and eastern Corn Belt as the heat holds on over the central plains. You can see a series of those cold fronts on the move out of the Canadian prairie through the northern plains, to the Corn Belt locales, and finally to the south and east, but probably no farther south than about I-70 or really I-64, trailing back to the I-4 corridor, I-40 corridor, he tries to say. It won't be a pronounced deep cool air intrusion, but enough to warn a winding down of the rain and a much cooler, drier air mass, probably some storm activity on the backside of that late next week into parts of the central plains. The next 7 days, everybody across the Corn Belt, this is added on, another adding on of at least a half to an inch and a half, some spots another 2. We don't need any more of that through parts of Illinois and Indiana. So I think some crop quality issues are going to come into play. Maybe the market guys will wake up and see that we're getting too much of a good thing, and the likelihood of severe weather continues to play. Speaking of the tropical Eastern Pacific, we are already on L in the category of alphabet through the Eastern Pacific. That system, by the way, will weaken into a tropical storm and depression, but move just south of the Big Island with some gusty winds, a foot of rain, and again, a significant storm surge. So while it's quiet in the Atlantic, and probably will stay that way, including the Florida Keys, havoc is going on in the Eastern Pacific. Meanwhile, back across the mainland of the U.S., a little overdone, but the right idea, some spots as much as another 2 or 3 inches on top of what you see right now. I think most of that will be north of the key flooding areas of Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana, more so in southern Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and northern Illinois going forward. The hot, dry weather will continue out of the southern plains into the Delta region, by the way, as the weekend progresses. High temperatures for the day today are just that, up near 100 to 105 southern plains. Look at the cool off for the northern plains areas and points on westward. And the rain cool air struggling to get past 80 into parts of Illinois, Indiana, south towards St. Louis. South of the boundary, they'll be up past maybe 95 to 100 this afternoon. So that's the range of temperatures, which is pretty unusual for this point in summertime. I'll look at the warmth as it continues on and through Saturday and through Sunday as well, building back over the southern and eastern Corn Belt before a cold front comes through. And while the storms will be scattered, they'll be likely to be heavy and severe over the Midwest over the course of the weekend. And we'll be back down into the upper 70s to middle 80s, a little more better feel between Monday, And then into Tuesday of next week, the heat begins to build back into the southern plains. Another cool front on the move here for Wednesday to Thursday, dropping temperatures down a bit below average for the northern plains, Great Lakes region, and far northern Corn Belt, just like we had talked about on the long range. And these will become more pronounced later in the month and early September and beyond from there. Very encouraged over the next 6 to 10 days. The right idea, the hot ridge over the southwestern and southern plains, upper air troughs will continue to be on the move. A little overdone on temperatures throughout at least parts of the central Corn Belt, but the right idea, the heat down through Dixie and the southern plains, most of the organized moisture in the northeast and New England along the divide. That's good news. The next 2 weeks, the right idea as well. And trough across the northeastern states will allow a couple of more cool fronts to make their way into the northern plains and at least through the northern and far eastern Corn Belt. And the right idea on temperatures generally at or a few degrees above average, with the heat confined to 2 areas along the divide Pacific Northwest. Not good news out there, considering fires and drought, and over the southeast part of the country. The right idea, we will start a drier trend of weather over the northern and central Corn Belt. Think that's probably going to last into, hopefully, if we can get harvest going here, down the line, maybe a little better thinking on harvest. Our next update on the live stream here, and we'll do just that through the rest of summer, the fall outlook. Maybe I'll have time even to take a look at winter time. I already know what's going on there. El Nino, El Nino, El Nino. Not everything drives El Nino or the weather systems by El Nino, but it is still a dominant thing, and again, a strong would be the proper vernacular. We're seeing just that, the impacts of a strong El Nino this summertime season over the middle part of the country.
So if it's El Nino in the winter, that means more snow, less snow, more cold? Cold?
Generally speaking, if you were to open up your class textbook into 100 and 200 level atmospheric science, you would tend to think that a drier, mild, after a couple of significant cold snaps and some early frost and brief light freeze concern, you get in deeper into late October, November, December, and the winter season thereafter tends to be pretty mild. Frequent mild spells, a lot of downslope winds off the Canadian Rockies and the U.S. Rockies. That is Chinook warming, snow-eating winds, and you get warming off of that, compressional warming. And so it goes mild, generally drier, snow-free. And so we have to keep an eye on maybe some of these drought areas if they continue on. Meanwhile, if we go with as strong as of an El Nino we think it's going to be, it could be havoc into California, the Southwest, the southern plains where we need the moisture, but all at once, too much of a good thing. And systems that would rise to the southeastern states up the Ohio. Sometimes that means wet snow or rain systems for parts of the Midwest. Rain and snow systems farther south of the southern Corn Belt, and usually even an active severe weather season in the southeastern states, the Gulf Coast, including Florida. That would be the textbook look at a strong, high category El Nino. We'll see if that is in the cards going forward on the next live stream.
Very good. And that's on the 25th. So mark your calendar for that if you would. Of course, you can catch Greg every weekend on This Week in Agribusiness and every week here on Feedstuffs 365. So Greg, thank you so much for the recent update, and we will check in with you next week.
Take care.
Thank you all for joining us as well.